Hey Amda, welcome to buying rechargeable batteries. I'm guessing you're a dad, wannabe dad, or just generally like dads. Um, yeah, that's it. Let's start. So, first question is why batteries? Well, why rechargeable batteries over disposable ones? Well, it's pretty simple. You're doing this for the environment, but you're also doing it for the environment, and they're just everywhere. If you're a dad, you know what it is. They're friggin' all over the place. Remote controls, mouse, keyboards, controllers, toys. Sometimes it's a lot. And if you've experienced it, um, disposable batteries tend to leak if they're not used for a long period of time. Let's say if they're in a toy of some sort, leave it there, it just leak and it's disgusting and they break everything. So that's why you're looking at rechargeable batteries. So let's talk about this for a while. So in this very brief shopping of batteries, I'm simply looking at what's available to me around where I live. And then the cat really wants in on this. So there's three brands that pop up when you look at websites, not websites, I'm sorry, but review channels like Project Farm. You really realize that some brands is like just pop out or come out of the lot. So you have the classic, very well-renowned Panasonic and Loop, which I believe used to be done by Sanyo, and then they changed. Um, Nonetheless, I mean, the idea is they're still very good batteries, but they have a tendency of being very expensive. Then you have the IKEA. There's an IKEA store not too far away. Whenever I go, I just pack in a few batteries, and I know they're really good. So they're to be considered. And then finally, I know I don't like buying from Amazon, but the Amazon basics are just very good and have a very good reputation. Now, I know there's a bunch of other brands. I'm not considering them because where I am presently, they're either not available at a normal decent price, like they would not even have been competitive. So let's say like the Duracell rechargeables, um, they have a great reputation, but they're so expensive. They're worse than the envelope where I live. So they're out of the equation. Um, Energizer is the same issue. They're decent batteries, but they're way too expensive. And finally, you have all those cheap brands like EBLs and Power Owl or whatever. But every single review I can find, they rank terribly. Either it's Project Farm, AA Cycler. Now these people do testing that is credible, and every time it's consistent. They're not decent, so they're out of the equation anyways. So I'm this is what I'm looking at, these three brands. Now you'll notice that there are two types of batteries for each of these brands. So you have the 2000-ish milliamp hours, and you have the 2400-ish milliamp hours. That's the capacity of your battery. So I read somewhere an analogy of the milliamp of your battery is the size of your gas tank, and the voltage of whatever tool will use these batteries, that's how much gas is being used. So the larger the tank, the longer you can last. However, there is a downfall to this. So as soon as you look at different reviews, you'll notice that the quality is not the same. So we'll get back down to this. Then you need to consider recharge cycles. So a battery has a life duration. Like at some point, it cannot recharge as much and as time goes and as you recharge them, they charge for less and less. Ultimately, they're just not useful anymore, so they're only good to be recycled. You need to look at these cycles because that has an effect on whether or not the battery will last a long time. Another aspect to consider is the price, not obviously, but it's not so much about price as it is about value. So it's how much energy are you getting out of that battery at a given price. So because of this, I'm also considering disposable batteries just for the sake of comparison. So I have compared the 2000-ish milliamp batteries for all three brands, the 2400 milliamp versions for all three. I've also added two extremely cheap go-to batteries that are disposable just to compare it how much it would cost per usage or per milliamp hour. So this is what the table comes out to. So let me just move this. So what it comes down to, if we go from left to right on this table and then up and down, the first column is the brand and the model number. So you'll notice Eneloop 1900, that's the 1900 capacity. There's no specific order in these batteries. I just put them as I went along. But they're all there. I'll have both of them. Except for the IKEA Lada 1900, you'll notice it says new model, no data. That's because it's brand new. No one has reviewed them properly yet. So I still don't have any data to compare them to anything. The only thing that I know is that in terms of price, it's very close to what the Amazon Basics 2000s do. So no, we'll get back at it a little later, but I have got nothing to compare them with. So that's my first column. The second column is the amount of cycles that you get. Now you'll notice that the numbers are very small. That's because I'm using data from aacycler.com, and the way aacycler works is they will charge and recharge and discharge the batteries for as long as they maintain 80% of the capacity. Once it cannot charge past that 80% mark, they just stop, and that's where they calculate it from. So, for example, the Eneloop was able to charge 371 times before it couldn't get past the 80% maximum capacity mark. So the Amazon Basic 297, the IKEA 89, the Eneloop Pro, which is a 2400 milliamps, 136, and finally the Amazon Basics 2400s are at 116. So you'll probably already notice a trend. The lower milliamp batteries can have much more cycles than the higher milliamp, higher capacities, and they don't really match up. I mean, let's say 2400 milliamps is only 20% more than 2000, for example, but they only have a life cycle of about a third, or let's say in the best of circumstances, like half of the life cycles. So you're really not getting like your money worth. Like I can tell from there that they won't be as cheap to maintain. In the bottom, I have the Kirkland Signature disposable batteries and the Amazon Basic disposables. So those only have one cycle because once you use them, you recycle them, and that's it. The third column is about the capacity. This is an average that's it's a mix. The data comes from either aacycler or Project Farm based on what I could find and not. So this is the milliamp hours that you have stored in one charge on average. So you can see it's pretty varying, but it's usually pretty close to what is advertised. Then I calculated the amount of cycles per milliamp hours. That gives you the amount of milliamp hours you'll get up until the battery is only able to get up to 80% of its charge. Then, because it would make calculations so much clearer, I converted the milliamp hours to amp hours. So basically, it's just a division by 1,000. That's because if I want to go with pricing, it gives me values that are closer to pennies, whereas milliamp hours in the totals gave me fractions of pennies. So, anyways, that's the only reason why I did this. Then we have the price. The price is set based on the best price I could get for one battery. If it came in a kit of 24, that's what it is, 48. Like, I'm really trying to get the best deal out of this to really compare with the best price possible. So what does it come down to? So if you look at the envelope, for example, they have the reputation of being expensive. And if you look at the pricing, just for the 1900, for example, the first line, it's $2.81 each. That's a single battery. However, if you take into account the fact that it can be recharged at least 371 times, that brings the price down for amp hour to about 0.4 cents. The Amazon Basic 2000, the per amp hour capacity is 0.2 cents. Then you have all three of the big higher capacity batteries, and like the IKEA and the Eneloop Pros, both are above 1 cent per amp hour. The Amazon Basic is surprisingly cheap at $0.48 per amp hour, and that's really good for a big high capacity battery. That's extremely cheap. But I need to tell you, they were on sale at the time I did this, so it comes a little bit more expensive, but it's not that much more expensive. So they're still rather cheap. Notice how in the bottom section you have both disposable batteries. Even though they're only 33 cents a piece, if you calculate the amount of amp hours you get out of them, they still come down to a price of 20 cents and 11 cents per amp hours. That's at least 10 times more expensive than the most expensive rechargeable, or it's at least like it's 100%, it's 100 times more expensive than the cheaper Amazon Basics and then the loops. So there's a reason why you should go with rechargeable batteries rather than disposable batteries. So it's not just for the environment, it's also because you're getting a lot more for your buck than you would with those stupid disposable batteries. And now there's often the argument of, yeah, but they last longer, the disposable batteries. Well, if you look at the milliamp hour capacity, you'll see that objectively they do not last longer. If you compare capacity for capacity, so the Kirkland Signature are marketed in the 1600 milliamp hours, and that's what they give you. The cheapest, the lowest capacity Eneloop that I'm considering is 1900 milliamp hours. So it still lasts longer in whatever device you're using. So that argument is total crap. There's no reason not to go with rechargeable batteries. I've highlighted my top 3. So in first place, the Amazon Basic 2000s. Those are crazy cheap at 0.2 cents per amp hour. Plus, just their basic price is just very cheap. They're accessible, they're easy to obtain on Amazon, and they're very cheap. If you want to stick with non-Amazon products, then the Eneloop is for you. They come down to 0.4 cent per amp hour. So I was really thinking the IKEA would have been cheaper, but they're not in the end because of the capacity and the long-lasting amount of cycles you get out of the envelopes. So as of now, the envelopes are the cheapest non-Amazon batteries you can get. Then, well, cheapest good quality batteries. You can still get EBLs for much cheaper, but I mean, you're not getting the same quality. And finally, if you want high capacity, then the Amazon Basics are for you. They're $1.33 each, which is extremely cheap. So they come down to 0.48 cents. The downfall is they don't last long, so you'll end up changing them more often than you would, let's say, the Amazon Basics or the Eneloop 1900s. So what are my final thoughts on these? Pretty simple. I understand I really had limited choice in what I'm presenting. I'm not showing you, this is not meant to be exhaustive. This is meant to be, these are the batteries that I'm considering. Like, you could go elsewhere and have different results. You know what? That's not my objective. My objective here is to tell you how you should be shopping batteries for batteries and giving you examples, and the examples I'm choosing are the ones that suit my choices. The second final thought is, if you take lower capacity, yes, you will be recharging them more often, but in the end, it's really worth having the lower capacity rather than the longer capacity. Then you get the added advantage of never breaking your equipment with rechargeable batteries. I don't know how many devices, toys I had to throw out because the batteries had leaked in them and I couldn't brush them enough or didn't feel like brushing them enough to remove all that battery acid from the toys. So in the end, getting the recyclable batteries is a choice that you make to not break your equipment. Also, as an added bonus, if you get some of those adapters to get the C size and the D size batteries out of AA's and AAA's, you get even more ability of using these batteries because you won't need to rely on those big batteries that you barely ever use, and they don't come into as high quality versions as the AA's and AAA's. So on that note, they are definitely worth the investment. We looked at the numbers. These are objective numbers. I didn't make them up. They're all based on evaluations that are credible. And as you can see, buying sets of these rechargeable batteries will definitely be worth the investment. So I'm really happy you stuck with me. I know it's a fairly long video for rechargeable batteries, and you might not have learned anything about rechargeable batteries themselves, but at least we crunched the numbers, and you should be able to come out of this video knowing that it's worth it to get a good set of rechargeable batteries for your household needs. If you are interested, this video is also in French, so you can just go ahead and in the channel, find it in the French version. You can listen to that as well. Comments are welcome. If you want more, well, there's a bunch of other videos. So I hope to see you soon. Have a good evening.